the safety and security of the American people. When they go out and they lie about this stuff, they put their fellow Americans at risk. J.D. Vance should be ashamed of himself. He knows better.
It is extremely dangerous because even though police say there have been no credible reports about people eating family pets in Springfield, Ohio, and the Republican mayor and the Republican governor and Trump supporting voters are begging for them to stop lying, Vance's own constituents have been left on edge, the whole community on edge, after threats of violence forced 2 elementary schools to evacuate today and university and college campuses in Springfield to move to remote virtual instruction, COVID-era stuff. An arts and culture festival meant to celebrate the community and its diversity has been canceled. Not to mention, there's been consecutive days of bomb threats that closed elementary schools, government buildings, and hospitals there. And Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president who brought this racist lie to the national stage at the debate last week, shrugged off the bomb threats, called them not a, quote, real problem, and refused to denounce the bomb threats at elementary schools. That's where we start the hour. Former Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan, who represented the state for more than 20 years and ran against J.D. Vance, is here. We've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. Glad you're here today. Also joining us, former senator and host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill, is here. Tim Ryan, let me start with you. You know who J.D. Vance is. The rest of us are still getting to know him. But I wrote that down. I've listened to that clip 3 times. If I have to create stories, I will. What is inside someone who can't be shamed, right? Who can't be forced to tell the truth when the lie is called a lie by J.D. Vance?
Yeah, thanks, Nicolle. Great to be on with you, too. I've been wanting to be sharing the stage with you. Look, he's just the kind of guy who has always been making up stories, and he tries to put himself in the middle of the story when it was, you know, he was going to be the character that went against Donald Trump. He was going to be the anti-Trump figure, you know, cultural heroine and all of that stuff that's been reported ad nauseum in the last few years. And then that switched, so he wanted to create another story that he was this guy who saw the light and, you know, moved along with Donald Trump. So I think what this shows to me is that there is no one, and then he wanted to come back to Ohio and reform Ohio. He started a fake opiate charity. Like, who does that? But that was to launch his political career and create that story. So the real question here is, for most people that aren't MSNBC watchers, this guy will do whatever he has to do. Everyone is just a pawn in his game. And to think of someone who's in a position of trust, like Claire held, like I held, your job is to protect these folks in Springfield, to look out for them, to advocate for them, not to destroy their community, not to pit them against each other. Is immigration complicated? Of course it is. You don't need leaders of the state to kind of deep six a community that's trying to grow out of deindustrialization and try to figure out how to move forward, and he's destroying that. So there's nobody he won't use. There's no dead body he won't step over. And then you see Trump, who just got shot at a couple days ago, saying he doesn't give a damn about bomb threats at schools. I mean, these are the kind of people that are running under the Republican Party banner, which is shameful.
Tim, I want to ask you to help us understand J.D. Vance a little better. I mean, he invoked Hitler in describing Donald Trump. He called him America's Hitler. He described him cultural heroine. And then he's describing his view of the media in that interview with Dana Bash by saying, if I have to create stories to get you, the media, to focus on it, I will. Tell me how he sees our democracy. If the media is a propaganda arm, in his own words, he's creating stories in his words to get the media to do things. He sees Trump as America's Hitler. I mean, what is his view of the world in sort of your assessment?
I think he sees the world as a very scary place. I think anyone who knows his background or someone who comes from that level of trauma, not to be a barstool psychologist here, but he has so much insecurity. He's so scared. He's so afraid inside that everything he tries to do is try to control, right? I mean, now he's a super conservative Catholic. He wants those real strict rules. He's a conservative now, as opposed to being more of a kind of an open-minded Democrat that was against Trump, because he wants the strict kind of conservative in his own mind to create some order from the chaos of his own life. And then so the manipulations around, like, I'm controlling the media, like, which is complete BS, right? But I'm controlling the media by getting them to take this catnip over here, and I'm going to create this story that they're going to go chase. It's all about him trying to convince himself, first and foremost, that he has some level of control of what's going on in his life. You know, when the reality is most of us have little control in what happens in our lives. You have some control, but you don't have kind of universal control. And it comes from that, I think, a really deep trauma. And that's what you start to see every day. And he's got the father figure in Donald Trump, you know, who will keep him safe, and he's protected. And he had Peter Thiel, who was able to get him through a primary, and Trump got him through the general, and, you know, all of that stuff. It was like he tries to be in a secure place, and Peter Thiel and Donald Trump make him feel very, very safe. And so he's going to stay in that lane as long as he can.
The other, I think, most revealing thing we learned about him was, in his own words again, that he believes that even violent marriages are ones that should remain, that women should stay in marriages even if they're violent. That's his language.
Well, I think that's along that same track, right? Like, no matter what happens, you stay in the marriage. He should be able to, or we need to control a woman's body, and so there needs to be a national abortion ban with no exceptions. So there's this very kind of patriarchal control that he wants to, you know, administer to the rest of society. And I think it comes from the trauma of the upbringing. But here's the deal. You need to process your stuff, you know, like, you don't bring your stuff. I mean, a lot of presidents have, but you don't bring your stuff to the public at large, to the body politic. Like, you have to be someone who is matured, who has processed trauma, who has processed your upbringing. And then you become a full-fledged leader, not someone who's looking to process that in the midst of, you know, a complicated world with all of these tough issues. And that's really the problem with both him and Donald Trump, is they're trying to heal their demons in the public square. And it's causing pure chaos, because on the inside of these guys is pure chaos and trauma, and they're just spewing it out to the rest of society. And that's what we see every day on TV, and that's what we see at the rallies. That's what we see on social media. And it's a sad state of affairs, but my hope is that, you know, the majority of the people see what they're doing here, independent voters, moderate Republicans, and saying, look, as we're seeing, like this, we can't go on this way anymore. It's a threat to the country.
Claire, I've read Hillbilly Elegy. I've read Fred Trump and Mary Trump's book. And what Tim Ryan just said isn't said very often, but it is borne out in the memoirs of Fred Trump and Mary Trump's lives, and in J.D. Vance's own memoir, in Hillbilly Elegy, that these male victims of trauma are passing it on to the country. I mean, and it's taken a minute to figure that out, and I wonder at what point we are part of the problem, right? Why? And we have to cover the threats to real people living in Springfield, Ohio. That is real. The elementary school, the school where 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds go to school, had bomb threats and closed several days in a row now because Trump lied about labradoodles getting eaten. He didn't say labradoodles. He said they're eating the dogs. All over social media are TikTok videos of dogs saying they're eating the dogs, they're eating the dogs. The chaos loop is so well worn, and the exhaustion is so complete, and the fear that you don't have to be a Haitian American, every parent in Springfield, Ohio is scared to send their baby to school, because when will it stop being a target? When will people, maybe you heard Trump say it at the debate. Maybe you saw Trump say it at a rally. Maybe you saw Trump's post. Maybe you saw J.D. Vance. Maybe it's just in the right-wing media ecosystem. And any day, a lunatic could see it and target their baby's elementary school. When does this stop, and how does this stop?
I wish I knew. But the political violence is a reality in America right now, and it's one that I believe the Democratic Party has tried very hard to speak out against. And we saw political violence in living color on January 6th. We've seen political violence at Charlottesville. We've seen political violence in terms of the trauma that these children in Springfield, Ohio are going through. This is impacting their lives. And you know what? They don't have a protective detail. Throwing acid on cars and threatening people and doing all of that in Springfield, Ohio. And it hasn't been pointed out yet, Nicole, at least so far in our discussion today, that the mayor of Springfield, Ohio, and the governor of Ohio are Republicans. These are not, you know, people that are for Kamala Harris, and I don't think either one of them have done anything but be supportive of Donald Trump. And they're the ones saying this is garbage. Quit doing that to this. Quit doing this to this community. And his language about creating stories, it was precise.
Correct.
If I have to create stories, and you know what? He knows he can get stories to kick off on social media, especially in that dark corner where their base hangs out. And he's creating other stories. They're creating stories that most of the immigrants in this country are raping and murdering. They're doing that. They're creating stories that crime is way up when crime is down. They are creating stories every day. The mask is off, like you said in your opening. But that was a really telling phrase, because he's a candidate for vice president. He knows every word will be dissected. And the fact, and he is very good with words. If you read Hillbilly Elegy, you know this guy is good with words. When he used the phrase, if I have to create stories or creating stories.
If I have to create stories to get the media to focus on them, we will.
Okay. So he's saying out loud what we all have sensed forever. They are willing to say anything to try to win an election, even if they fundamentally understand it's damaging, harmful, and really dangerous.
So what's the remedy?
I think to dispatch the people who do that. I mean, the remedy is peaceful. The remedy is voting. The remedy is deciding that we don't want candidates for the highest office in the land creating stories that put people in danger. We want candidates who want to solve the serious problems our country has. And I think if you look at the candidates and how they're conducting the campaigns, one is all about the darkness and the crime and the raping and the murdering, and they're coming after your children. And the other is, you know what can I do to help you? What can I do to make your college more affordable? What can I do to bring down your prescription drug costs? It is such a contrast. And all of us abhor political violence, including threats on the former president.
Of course.
That's what we have in common with the Republican Party today. The Democrats stand full score against anybody who commits political violence. I wish the Republicans would be as consistent.
Tim, you ran a very effective campaign against J.D. Vance. What is the best way to defeat what he's selling to the people of Ohio and the country this time around?